They tried to humiliate the man at the hotel door, not knowing he was the owner of the building. William Carter watched the activity at the hotel entrance while trying to gather the courage to go in. 3 years living on the streets of New York City had deeply marked his face, but they couldn't erase the determined glint in his eyes when he looked at that building that was once his pride. The new manager, Karen Mitchell, appeared at the revolving door just as he took his first step toward the entrance. She looked him up and down with evident disgust, noticing the worn-out clothes, the long, unkempt beard, and the smell that 3 days without a shower left on anyone. "Hey, you there!" she shouted, making several guests turn their heads in their direction. "This is no place for people like you. Go look for the city shelters." William stopped amid the movement, feeling his heart race. Beside him, Olivia Taylor adjusted her sunglasses and held her bag firmly. The elegant red dress she wore contrasted completely with his appearance, but she remained by her companion's side without hesitation. "Excuse me, ma'am," said William in a hoarse voice. "I would just like to use the reception phone. It's very important." Karen laughed loudly, a sound that echoed through the lobby and made several staff members look at the scene uncomfortably. "The phone? You think this is a social assistance post?" She moved closer, speaking loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Just look at the state you're in. You're stinking up the whole hotel." On the bench in front of the hotel, young Tyler, the shoeshine boy, stopped polishing a gentleman's shoes and watched the scene carefully. Something about that bearded face seemed familiar to him, but he couldn't figure out what it was. His mother, Shirley, who had worked as a maid at the hotel for 15 years, was passing through the entrance when she saw the commotion. "Mom," whispered Tyler, tugging at the hem of her uniform. "That man over there, I think I've seen him somewhere." Shirley looked in the direction her son pointed and felt a strange chill. There was something about those eyes that bothered her, like a distant memory trying to surface. Inside the hotel, Karen continued her public humiliation. She had taken over as manager only 6 months ago, after the hotel underwent a mysterious administrative change. The former owner had disappeared without a trace, and management was handed over to a hotel management company. "Security!" she shouted, snapping her fingers. "Get this bum out of here before he scares our guests." 2 security guards approached, but the older one, Walter, hesitated. There was something about that man that made him uncomfortable. He had worked at that hotel for over 20 years and had an excellent memory for faces. "Ma'am," he said calmly, "perhaps we can handle this another way. The gentleman just wants to use the phone." "Walter, are you questioning my orders?" Karen turned to him with fiery eyes. "I am the manager here, and anyone who doesn't follow my instructions is fired on the spot." The lobby was getting more and more tense. Guests stopped to watch the scene, some discreetly taking pictures with their cell phones. An elderly lady at the reception stood up indignantly and walked toward the group. "This is outrageous," she said aloud. "How can you treat a human being like this?" Olivia, who had remained silent until then, stepped forward. She took her phone out of her bag and started recording the whole scene, her expression serious behind the sunglasses. "Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now, continuing. "I won't tolerate this," said Karen, noticing she was being filmed. "Either you leave right now, or I'll call the authorities to remove you by force." That's when she did something that shocked even the snobbiest guests present in the lobby. She grabbed a glass of water from the reception desk and threw it at William, soaking him completely. "There, now you're a little cleaner," she said with a cruel smile. The silence that followed was deafening. William remained still, with water dripping from his hair and beard, but his eyes maintained a dignity that impressed everyone present. The elderly lady from the reception approached him and took off her own coat, offering it to him to dry himself. "Thank you, ma'am," said William, accepting the coat with gratitude. "Betty," she replied, casting a disapproving look at Karen. "Betty Thompson, and feel free to use my coat as long as you need." Walter approached Karen and whispered something in her ear. Her face paled for a moment, but she soon laughed nervously. "Walter, you're getting old and imagining things," she said aloud. "That one is just another opportunist who wants to take advantage of our hospitality." That's when William put his hand in his pocket and pulled out something that made Walter's blood run cold. It was a golden keychain with the hotel's original coat of arms, the one only the owner possessed. The same keychain he had seen thousands of times in the hands of the true owner. Shirley, who was watching everything from the entrance, felt her legs weaken. The memory finally cleared in her mind. That was William Carter, the man who had built that hotel with his own hands, who knew the name of every employee and always treated everyone with respect and affection. "My God," she murmured, covering her mouth with her hands. Tyler looked at his mother, confused by her reaction, but before he could ask anything, he saw all the hotel's longest-serving employees gathering at the lobby entrance. One by one, they bowed their heads as a sign of respect, finally recognizing who was there. Karen looked around, confused by everyone's reaction. She didn't understand why employees who always blindly obeyed her now seemed to be on the side of a beggar. "What's going on here?" she asked, her voice slightly trembling. Everyone back to work immediately. But no one moved. The veteran receptionist, Michael, slowly approached the counter and picked up a framed photo that was kept in a special drawer. It was an old photo of the hotel at its inauguration, and in it appeared a younger man, well-dressed, but with the same eyes and the same smile as William. "Miss Karen," said Michael in a firm voice, "I'd like to introduce you to Mr. William Carter, founder and owner of this hotel." The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of the frame falling from Karen's hands and shattering on the marble floor. She looked from the photo to William and then back to the photo, trying to process the information she had just received. That's impossible," she stammered. "The owner disappeared 3 years ago. Everyone knows that." William slowly approached, each step echoing through the silent lobby. When he got close to Karen, he stopped and looked her directly in the eyes. "I didn't disappear," he said in a calm voice, but filled with emotion. "I chose to live an experience that completely changed my view of life and people." Olivia approached and took off her sunglasses, revealing bright green eyes full of tears. She looked at William with pride and love, holding his hand tightly. "3 years ago," William continued, "I lost the most important person in my life. My wife Rebecca was gone in a traffic accident, and I thought my life had ended along with hers." Several employees moved closer, some with tears in their eyes, as they remembered Rebecca, who had always been beloved by everyone at the hotel. "Rebecca had grown up homeless," said William. His voice choked. "She always told me how painful it was to be treated as if she were invisible, as if she didn't deserve respect just because she was in a difficult situation." Shirley could no longer contain herself and approached the group, with Tyler by her side. "Mr. William," she said with a trembling voice, We have missed you and Mrs. Rebecca so much. She was like a mother to all of us." William smiled for the first time since arriving at the hotel, a smile that lit up his entire tired face. "Shirley," he said, recognizing her immediately. "How are you? And this young man must be Tyler, whom she always told me about in her letters." Tyler looked at the man with growing admiration. His mother had told him many stories about the former owner of the hotel, a fair man who helped the employees and their families whenever necessary. "After Rebecca passed away," William continued, "I decided to do something she had always asked me to do, to live in the shoes of the people she once was, to understand firsthand what it means to be rejected, humiliated, treated as if you were less than human." Karen was in complete shock. Everything she had done in the last few minutes ran through her head like a horror movie. The humiliations, the water thrown, the cruel words, all directed at the man who was her real boss. Mr. Carter," she stammered, I didn't know. No one told me. If I had known—" "If you had known, would you have treated me differently?" interrupted William. "But why would you treat me differently? Because I have money? Because I own this building? The question is, why don't you treat all people with the same respect regardless of who they are?" The question echoed through the lobby like a slap. Karen didn't know how to respond because deep down she knew he was right. Olivia stepped forward and introduced herself officially. "My name is Olivia Taylor," she said in a clear voice. "I'm a social worker, and I met William 2 years ago when he showed up at the shelter where I work." She looked around, observing the expressions of surprise on the faces of those present. At first, I thought he was just another man who had lost everything in life, Olivia continued. But gradually I discovered that he had chosen that situation to learn something that money could never teach. William nodded, remembering the difficult first days on the streets, when he still didn't know how to ask for food or where to sleep safely. The first months were the hardest of my life, he admitted. Not just because of hunger or the cold, but because of the way people looked at me, as if I were less human for being in a vulnerable situation. Walter approached, his eyes filled with tears. "Mr. William, we searched for you everywhere," he said. "I myself went out on the streets for months showing your photo to everyone." "I know, Walter," William replied affectionately, "and I saw you searching. Several times I was very close to you, but I needed to complete this journey." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out, now continuing. Betty, the lady who had offered the coat, approached with curiosity. "Forgive the question," she said politely, "but what exactly did you learn in these 3 years?" William looked at her with gratitude for the sincere question. "I learned that human dignity is priceless," he replied. "I learned that a kind word can save a person's day. I learned that we are all just a few wrong decisions away from being in the same situation." He looked directly at Karen, who was visibly shaken. "But most of all, I learned that a person's true character is revealed in how they treat those who seemingly can offer nothing in return." Karen finally found the courage to speak. "Mr. Carter, I made a terrible mistake," she said, her voice trembling. "I was just trying to maintain the hotel's image, protect our guests from people like me." William completed without anger, only sadness. "Karen, do you know who were the first people to offer me food and shelter when I was on the streets?" She shook her head no. "They were people who also had almost nothing," he said. "People experiencing homelessness, who shared with me the few resources they had. Meanwhile, well-dressed people walked past me as if I were invisible." Michael, the receptionist, took the opportunity to speak up. "Mr. William, there's something I need to tell you," he said nervously. "Ever since Miss Karen took over as manager, some strange things have been happening." Karen paled even more, if that were possible. "What kind of things, Michael?" asked William, his attention fully focused on the employee. "Well, sir, the tips that guests leave for the staff. They haven't been reaching us," said Michael, looking nervously at Karen. "And some suppliers have commented about certain extra financial requirements to maintain contracts." The silence that followed was heavy. William looked at Karen, who was clearly panicking. "Is this true, Karen?" he asked in a calm but firm voice. "Mr. Carter, I can explain," she said quickly. "The tips were being saved for a special year-end bonus, and as for the suppliers—" "Karen," Olivia interrupted firmly. "I work with corruption cases in institutions. I recognize excuses when I hear them." Shirley, who had remained quiet until then, stepped forward. "Mr. William," she said with renewed courage, "can I speak about other situations?" William nodded, encouraging her to continue. "Ms. Karen has been publicly humiliating staff," said Shirley, her voice gaining strength. "Last week she made Gloria, who's been working in cleaning for 10 years, scrub the lobby floor on her knees because there was a small stain." Murmurs of indignation echoed through the lobby. Several employees moved closer, feeling encouraged to speak. "And she forced me to work even with a high fever," added a younger maid. "She said if I went home I could look for another job. She's also been charging suppliers an extra fee to guarantee that contracts are renewed," said the hotel accountant, who had arrived in the lobby drawn by the commotion. "I have all the proof." Karen was visibly desperate. She looked around, searching for some support, but found only disapproving looks. "Mr. Carter," she said in a trembling voice, "I can return all the money. It was a misunderstanding. I never meant to—" "Karen," William said calmly, "the problem isn't just the money. The problem is how you've been treating people, how you thought you could humiliate and disrespect human beings who work honestly." Olivia approached William and whispered something in his ear. He nodded and looked at Karen again. "I'll make you a proposal," he said. You can keep your job, but on one condition. Karen's eyes lit up with hope. Any condition, Mr. Carter. I'll do anything. You will spend a week working at the shelter where I met Olivia, said William. You will serve food, clean, listen to the stories of people experiencing homelessness. You'll understand in practice what human dignity means. The hope on Karen's face turned to horror. Mr. Carter, please, she begged. I can't lower myself to that point. I have a reputation to maintain, an image. So you'd rather be fired? William asked simply. Karen fell silent for a long moment, processing her options. Finally, she raised her chin with wounded pride. I prefer to keep my dignity, she said. I would never stoop to working with that kind of people. William nodded sadly. Then you're fired, Karen, he said firmly. Not for the corruption, which could be forgiven with restitution and sincere repentance, but for your refusal to recognize the humanity in all people. Karen left the hotel under everyone's gaze, her departure marking the end of an era of authoritarianism and disrespect in that institution. When she was gone, William turned to the staff still gathered in the lobby. I'd like to speak with all of you, he said. In the coming days, this hotel will undergo some important changes. Shirley approached timidly. Mr. William, will you be living here at the hotel again? She asked. William smiled and looked at Olivia. Not exactly like before, he replied. Olivia and I have some projects we want to implement, projects that will honor Rebecca's memory and fulfill her dream of a more just world. Tyler, who had watched everything with fascination, approached William. Sir, he said with a child's typical curiosity, are you really very rich? William bent down to the boy's level. Tyler, I've learned there are many kinds of wealth, he said gently. Money is just one of them. The most important wealth comes from the heart. And what's that? Asked Tyler, genuinely interested. The ability to make other people happy, replied William. And you know what? Your mother is one of the richest people I know. Shirley blushed at the compliment, and Tyler looked at her with renewed pride. In the days that followed, William and Olivia began implementing changes at the hotel that shocked the luxury hospitality world. The first change was creating a program where half the rooms would be available at social prices for families in temporary vulnerability. The news spread quickly through the city and soon reached the national press. Some traditional guests were outraged and threatened to cancel their reservations permanently. How can we feel comfortable knowing there are that kind of people in the same hotel? Complained a wealthy businessman during a press conference William held to explain the changes. That kind of people are people, William replied calmly. People going through temporary difficulties who need support to get back on their feet. If your comfort depends on excluding other human beings, perhaps this is no longer the ideal hotel for you. To many people's surprise, the project attracted attention from progressive investors and international organizations interested in business models with social impact. The hotel began receiving visitors from around the world who wanted to learn about the initiative. Olivia officially assumed the position of the hotel's Director of Social Responsibility, creating professional training programs for people in vulnerable situations. The idea is simple, she explained to journalists. We offer temporary housing, meals, and most importantly, professional training opportunities. Many of these people become employees of the hotel itself. Shirley was one of the first to benefit from the program. She was enrolled in a hospitality and management course, while Tyler received a scholarship to a nearby private school. I never imagined I could study hotel management, said Shirley, emotional during an interview. I always thought people like me were only meant to clean rooms. And there's nothing wrong with cleaning rooms, replied William, who was present at the interview. The problem is when society makes people believe they can't aspire to more. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now, continuing. Walter was promoted to security manager and developed a special protocol for respectful treatment of all visitors, regardless of their appearance or social status. Now every security guard undergoes training on human dignity, he explained proudly. We learn to see the person behind the appearance. The hotel became an international model, receiving delegations from other countries interested in replicating the experience. Universities began including the case in their hotel administration and social responsibility curricula. But not everything was easy. Some sectors of society harshly criticized the initiative. "This will attract more beggars to the area," complained a local merchant at a business association meeting. "It will harm all businesses in the area." "Funny," replied William, who was invited to the meeting. "In the last 6 months, commercial activity in the area has increased 30%. People from all over the country come to visit the hotel and end up spending at local businesses." Indeed, the initiative had transformed the entire region. Restaurants, shops, and other services benefited from the rise in conscious tourism. A particularly touching situation occurred 3 months after the changes. A family of Syrian refugees was staying at the hotel through the social program when their youngest daughter, just 8 years old, became ill. The girl, named Hope, developed a serious infection and had to be hospitalized. The family had no means to pay for the treatment, and the public health system was overwhelmed. William didn't hesitate. He arranged the best private medical care for the girl, personally accompanying the family throughout the process. "Why are you doing this for us?" asked the girl's father, emotional. "We are nothing to you." "You are everything," William replied simply. "You are the reason this project exists." The story of the Syrian family made it into the newspapers, generating a wave of solidarity that resulted in donations for an emergency medical fund for all program beneficiaries. Hope recovered completely, and the family managed to settle in the city. The father got a job as a cook at the hotel itself, after completing a course in American cuisine offered by the training program. But the true proof that the changes were profound came from an unexpected source. 6 months after her dismissal, Karen appeared at the hotel's door. She was different. Her clothes were simpler, her hair more natural, and there was something in her eyes that hadn't been there before, genuine humility. "Mr. Carter," she said, her voice trembling. "I know I have no right to be here, but I needed to speak with you." William received her in the office, which had been reorganized with a more welcoming and less pompous decor. "In the last few months, I've had a lot of time to think," said Karen. "Losing this job was the best thing that ever happened in my life." William listened to her in silence, allowing her to express herself fully. "I started working as a volunteer at a shelter for the elderly," she continued. "At first, it was difficult. I felt superior to them, thought I was doing charity, but gradually I began to hear their stories." She stopped to wipe away the tears that had started to flow. "I found out that some of those elderly people were successful business owners, respected teachers, talented artists. Life brought them there due to circumstances beyond their control. And I realized that could be me there, at any moment." "What do you want from me, Karen?" asked William gently. "I want a second chance," she said. "Not to return to my old position, but to prove I've learned something. I'd like to work in your social program in whatever capacity needed, without pay if necessary." William remained silent for a long moment, studying the face of the woman who had tried to humiliate him publicly. "Do you accept starting as a volunteer in cleaning?" he asked finally. "I accept any role," she replied without hesitation. "And do you accept working directly with homeless individuals, listening to their stories, serving them with respect?" continued William. "That's what I want most," said Karen sincerely. "I need to learn how to be a better person." William extended his hand to her. "Welcome back, Karen," he said. "But this time you'll start from scratch and prove your worth through actions, not words." Karen shook his hand firmly, tears streaming freely down her face. In the following months, she became one of the program's most dedicated volunteers. She worked tirelessly, always willing to do any task, no matter how simple. A particularly striking situation occurred when a homeless man arrived at the hotel during a heavy rainy night. He was sick and could barely stand. Karen, who was on duty at the night shelter, didn't hesitate. She helped the man bathe, provided clean clothes, and stayed by his side all night as he recovered from a high fever. "Why are you doing this?" asked the man the next morning. "I must smell bad. I must be disgusting." "You're being cared for because you deserve to be cared for," replied Karen simply. "Every human being deserves dignity and care." Olivia, who was observing Karen's transformation, was impressed by the woman's genuine change. "You know, William," she said one night while reviewing the program's reports, "I think Karen has learned more about humanity in a few months than many people learn in a lifetime." "Sometimes we need to break in order to rebuild ourselves better," replied William philosophically. The first anniversary of the changes at the hotel was marked by a big celebration. Dozens of families who had benefited from the program attended, many of them already established in new lives. Shirley, now graduated in hospitality, had been promoted to floor supervisor. Tyler was second in his class at the private school and dreamed of becoming a business administrator. "Uncle William," said Tyler during the party, "when I grow up, I want to have a hotel just like yours." "Just like how?" asked William, interested in the child's response. "A hotel where all people are treated well," replied Tyler with childhood simplicity, "where no one is humiliated for being different." The Syrian family was also present. Hope had become an excellent student and spoke English fluently. Her father had been promoted to assistant chef and was planning to open a Syrian cuisine restaurant in the city. "Mr. William," said Hope's father during his speech, "you didn't just save my daughter. You saved our entire family. You gave us hope when we thought all was lost." Walter approached the improvised stage in the lobby to give his own speech. "I've worked at this hotel for over 20 years, he said, with an emotional voice. "I've seen many changes, but I've never seen transformations as profound as these, not just in the hotel structure, but in the people." He looked directly at William. "You taught us that true luxury isn't about excluding people, but including them. That true elegance isn't in expensive clothes, but in the respectful treatment we give everyone." During the celebration, a special surprise awaited William. Olivia had secretly organized a special tribute to Rebecca. "Rebecca always dreamed of a world where her background wouldn't determine how people treated her," Olivia said into the microphone. William made that dream a reality. A plaque was unveiled in the main lobby. "Rebecca Carter Hotel, where every person deserves dignity." William's emotion was visible to everyone present. "Rebecca would be proud," he said with a choked voice, "not just of what we built here, but of how we built it, through love, respect, and the belief that everyone deserves a second chance." Karen, who now coordinated the volunteer program, timidly approached William. "Mr. Carter," she said, "I'd like to say something if you'll allow me." William nodded, handing her the microphone. "A year ago I tried to humiliate this man at the door of his own hotel," she said, her clear voice echoing through the lobby. "I thought dignity was something you bought with money, that respect was a privilege for the few." The lobby was completely silent. "Today I understand that the greatest wealth anyone can have is the ability to see the humanity in all people," Karen continued. "Mr. William, thank you for not giving up on me when I had given up on myself." The applause was deafening. Many people were crying, touched by the sincerity of Karen's transformation. Olivia approached William and whispered in his ear, "You know this project goes far beyond a hotel, don't you?" "How so?" he asked, curious. "You've created a movement," she replied. "Hotels from other cities are already contacting us wanting to implement similar programs. You're changing an entire industry." Indeed, in the following weeks, the Rebecca Carter model began being replicated in other cities. Hotels of different categories adapted the philosophy to their realities, creating social inclusion programs. A university in New York City created a specialization course in inclusive hospitality, using the hotel as the main case study. Business administration students from across the country came to do internships and learn about the model. But perhaps the greatest recognition came from an unexpected source. The World Tourism Organization invited William to present the project at an international conference on sustainable tourism. What began as a personal journey of self-discovery has become a business model that proves profit and social purpose can go hand in hand, William said in his speech to delegates from over 50 countries. After the conference, several countries expressed interest in adapting the model to their cultural and social realities. Back in the United States, William continued his nightly walks through the streets of New York City, but now with a different purpose. He talked with homeless people, offering not just immediate help, but opportunities for a fresh start through the expanded program. One night, he found a young man, about 25 years old, sleeping under an overpass. There was something familiar about that face, but William couldn't identify what it was. "Good evening," William said, approaching respectfully. "Would you like to talk?" The young man lifted his head, revealing intelligent but tired eyes. "Depends on what you want," he replied with suspicion. "If it's to preach religion or tell me to get a job, you can move along." William smiled, recognizing the defensive attitude he himself had developed during his years on the street. "I don't want to preach anything," he said, sitting on the ground next to the young man. "I just want to hear your story, if you want to tell it." The young man studied him for a moment, intrigued by the sincerity of the offer. "My name is Brandon," he finally said. "Brandon Mitchell. And you are?" William felt a shock upon hearing the last name. Mitchell was Karen's last name. "William," he replied simply. "Nice to meet you, Brandon." In the hours that followed, Brandon told his story. He was Karen's son, but had broken ties with his mother years ago due to her authoritarian and prejudiced behavior. "My mother was always ashamed of me," explained Brandon. "I was homosexual in a family that didn't accept differences. When I left home at 18, she said I was dead to her." William listened in silence, processing the information that he was talking to Karen's son. "In recent years, I've tried several times to rebuild my life," Brandon continued. "I got jobs a few times, but prejudice always ended up knocking me down again." "And have you heard from your mother?" William asked carefully. "I heard she lost an important job a few months ago," Brandon replied indifferently. "Honestly, I don't care. She never cared about me." William spent the rest of the night talking with Brandon without revealing his connection to Karen. He offered help through the hotel's program, but Brandon was skeptical. "I've heard many empty promises," he said. "Thanks for the conversation, but I've learned not to trust in miracles." William respected Brandon's decision, but left a card with program information. "If you change your mind, look for Olivia Taylor at the Rebecca Carter Hotel," he said. "Tell her William sent you." The next morning, William sought out Karen at the hotel. She was organizing clothing donations for the program when he arrived. "Karen, I need to talk to you about something personal," he said. She immediately became worried, thinking she had done something wrong. "Of course, Mr. William. What happened?" "Last night, I met a young man named Brandon Mitchell," William said, watching her reaction. Karen's face instantly paled. She leaned on the table to keep from falling. Brandon?" she stammered. "My Brandon? Where? How is he?" "He's living on the streets," William replied gently. "And from what he told me, you haven't spoken in years." Karen broke down in tears. All the repressed suffering of recent years came pouring out at once. "I was a terrible mother," she sobbed. "When Brandon told me he was gay, I couldn't accept it. I thought he was disrespecting me, dishonoring the family." William sat beside her, offering support. "What would you like to do now?" he asked. "I want my son back," she said through tears. "But I don't know if he'll forgive me. I said horrible things to him. I told him he was dead to me." "People can change, Karen," William said. "You are living proof of that. But Brandon needs to see that change, not just hear about it." In the following days, Karen worked tirelessly to locate Brandon. She knew the places he used to stay, but he had disappeared after the conversation with William. Finally, a week later, Brandon showed up at the hotel. He was thin and clearly malnourished, but there was a new determination in his eyes. "I came to speak with Olivia Taylor," he said at the reception. "William said she could help me." Michael, the receptionist, immediately called Olivia, who came down to greet him. "Brandon?" said a voice behind him. He turned and saw Karen, who had appeared in the lobby upon hearing his name. The two stood still, looking at each other across years of hurt and misunderstanding. "Mom?" said Brandon, his voice trembling. "What are you doing here?" "I work here," replied Karen, taking a hesitant step toward him. "In the social assistance program." Brandon looked around, confused. The last thing he expected was to find his mother working in a social program. I don't understand, he said. Olivia noticed the tension in the situation and gently intervened. Brandon, why don't we talk in my office? She suggested. Your mother can join us if you'd like. Brandon hesitated for a moment, but finally nodded. In the office, the whole story was revealed. Karen told of her transformation, about how she had lost her job for treating people poorly, about how she had learned to value human dignity. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, she said to Brandon. I know I was a terrible mother, prejudiced and cruel. But I've changed, Brandon. I really have changed. Brandon listened to her in silence, processing information that seemed impossible. The proud and prejudiced mother he knew was there, humble and asking for forgiveness. Do you really work with homeless people? He asked in disbelief. Every day, replied Karen, and every person I help reminds me of the son I rejected. It reminds me of how cruel I was to you. Brandon began to cry, years of hurt finally finding an outlet. I just wanted you to love me for who I am, he said between sobs. I never wanted to disappoint you. Karen stood up and hesitantly approached her son. Can I hug you? She asked. Brandon nodded, and mother and son hugged for the first time in years. Olivia discreetly left the office, giving them privacy. The reunion of Karen and Brandon became another milestone in the hotel's history. Brandon joined the training program and discovered a talent for cooking, working alongside the Syrian chef. It's ironic, he commented to William months later. I spent years running away from my mother, and now I work in the same place as her. And how is your relationship? Asked William. It's being built day by day, replied Brandon. She really has changed. Sometimes I still can't believe it, but she proves every day that she's a different person. Karen had become a fierce advocate for LGBT people's rights in the social program, using her own experience to help other families going through similar situations. I wasted years of my son's life because of prejudice, she said in talks to families. Don't let pride destroy the love you feel for your children. The second anniversary of the changes at the hotel was even more special than the first. The program had benefited more than 500 families, and the success rate for social reintegration was 80%. William gave an emotional speech during the celebration. When I started this journey, I thought I was doing it for Rebecca, he said, but I discovered I was doing it for myself and for all of us, because we all need to learn that true greatness lies in lifting others up, not in trampling them down. Olivia approached the stage to make a special announcement. We have some news, she said with a mysterious smile. The Rebecca Carter Hotel program is going international. We already have interested parties in Canada, the United Kingdom, and Australia. The applause was deafening. What had started as William's personal experience was becoming a worldwide movement. But perhaps the most touching moment of the night was when Tyler, now 16 and about to graduate from high school, took the stage. I was a boy shining shoes on the street when I met Uncle William, he said, his voice firm and confident. Today I'm preparing to enter university to study hotel management. He looked directly at William. But more important than that, I learned that true success isn't measured by what you have, but by what you're able to give to others. Shirley, now the hotel's general manager, was crying with pride for her son. Tyler will be the first in our family to attend college, she said emotionally. And all of this because someone believed we deserved a chance. As the night progressed, William Carter stepped away from the party and went to the small memorial he had created for Rebecca in the hotel garden. Olivia Taylor found him there a few minutes later. Thinking about her? She asked gently. Always, replied William, but especially today. She would be so happy seeing all this. She is watching, said Olivia, holding his hand. Through every life we change, every prejudice we break down, every person who finds dignity where there was once contempt. William nodded, feeling a deep peace. The pain of losing Rebecca would never completely disappear, but it had transformed into purpose. You know, Olivia, he said, when I started living on the streets I thought I was running away from life, but actually I was running toward it. How so? I spent decades building material wealth, but I only learned to be truly rich when I lost everything. explained William. True wealth is being able to sleep peacefully, knowing your life made a difference in other people's lives. 3 years had passed since that morning when William arrived at the hotel looking like a beggar. The man who had been humiliated at the door now welcomed presidents and nobles in the same lobby, but always with the same simplicity. His beard remained long, his clothes stayed simple, but his impact echoed throughout the entire world. The hotel was no longer just a luxurious building, but a symbol that true riches are compassion and humanity. One morning, while William was having coffee in the hotel restaurant, a well-dressed man approached him. "Sorry to bother you," said the man, "but aren't you William Carter?" "That's me," replied William friendly. "My name is Richard Spencer," said the man, extending his hand. "I own a hotel chain and would like to talk to you about the possibility of implementing your model in my establishments." William smiled, remembering the early days when business owners threatened to boycott the hotel because of the social changes. "It would be a pleasure to talk," he said. "But first tell me, what motivated you to seek out our model?" Richard sat down, clearly emotional. "My son is going through a difficult time," he explained. "He lost his job, his home, and has been living on the streets for a few months. Yesterday he called me crying, saying he had been humiliated at the door of one of my own hotels." William nodded, understanding the father's pain. "That's when I realized," continued Richard, "that I built an empire based on exclusion. And now my own son was becoming a victim of that exclusion." "And how can I help you?" asked William. "I want to change everything," said Richard with determination. "I want my hotels to be places where people like my son are treated with dignity, no matter what situation they're in." This conversation marked the beginning of a new phase of the movement. Major hotel chains began adopting the model, creating a wave of change throughout the hospitality industry. Olivia created a training institute to teach the principles of inclusive hospitality. Professionals from all over the world came to learn not just the techniques, but mainly the philosophy behind the movement. "It's not just about offering cheap rooms," she explained during the courses. "It's about transforming how we see and treat people. It's about recognizing that everyone deserves dignity." Karen became one of the main instructors at the Institute, using her own transformation as a living example that people can change. "I was the manager who humiliated people," she would tell the classes. "I thought I was protecting the hotel's image, but I was actually staining its soul." Brandon also participated in the courses, sharing his life story and showing how prejudice can destroy families. "My mother and I lost precious years because of prejudice," he would say. "But today, we work together to ensure other families don't go through the same suffering." The movement's impact went beyond the hotel industry. Restaurants, stores, and companies from various sectors began rethinking their customer service policies. A supermarket chain created a program to hire homeless individuals, offering training and opportunities for professional growth. A restaurant chain started training its staff to treat all customers with equal respect, regardless of their appearance or social status. Schools began including subjects on human dignity and combating prejudice in their curricula. The movement had become a broader social transformation, touching various aspects of American society. One special morning, 5 years after the changes began, William received a call that would change everything once again. "William," said a familiar voice on the other end of the line. "Karen?" he replied, immediately recognizing the voice. "Not the Karen who works here, but your voice sounds—" "It's me, Rebecca," said the voice, and William's world stopped. The phone fell from his hands. Olivia, who was in the office, rushed to him upon seeing his shocked expression. "William, what happened?" she asked, worried. "Rebecca," he whispered, his eyes filled with tears. "Rebecca is alive." The call had dropped, but a few minutes later the phone rang again. Olivia answered. "Hello?" "Please don't hang up," said the voice. "I know it seems impossible, but I am Rebecca Carter. I've been in a coma for 5 years, and I just woke up." Olivia looked at William, who was in complete shock. How can we be sure it's you?" asked Olivia, trying to stay calm. "On our first date, William took me to dinner at a small Italian restaurant in Greenwich Village," said the voice. I spilled tomato sauce on my white blouse, and he said I looked beautiful, even covered in tomato. William took the phone from Olivia's hands. Rebecca, he said, his voice trembling. Is it really you? It's me, my love, she replied. I know it's hard to believe. I can't believe I'm waking up now either. William broke down in tears. 5 years of grief, transformation, rebuilding his life, and now Rebecca was alive. Where are you? He asked. I'm in a hospital in Boston, Rebecca answered. The doctors said it was a miracle I woke up. They told me about the accident, about how you disappeared. I'm coming to get you right now, said William, already getting up. William, Rebecca said softly, the doctors told me about the hotel, about what you did, about how you turned our pain into something beautiful. You know about the program? He asked, surprised. A nurse here is a beneficiary of a hotel program that followed our model, Rebecca explained. She told me everything. How you lived on the streets, how you started the movement in my honor. William was sobbing, unable to fully process what was happening. Rebecca, I thought you were gone forever, he said. In a way, I was gone, she replied philosophically. And you used that departure to become the person I always knew you could be. Olivia watched the scene with tears in her eyes, understanding that her life was also about to change dramatically. William, said Rebecca, there's something I need to tell you. What? I remember everything that happened during the coma, she said. I don't know how to explain it, but I was there, seeing everything. I saw you suffer. I saw you choose the streets. I saw you find Olivia. William's heart stopped for a moment. And I want you to know, Rebecca continued, that I'm proud of both of you, of the love you built, of the work you did together. Rebecca, William began, but she interrupted him. Don't feel guilty about anything, she said firmly. You honored my memory in the most beautiful way possible. And now we need to figure out how to move forward, all together. The conversation that followed was one of the most difficult in William's life. Rebecca was alive, but 5 years had passed. He had rebuilt himself, found new love, created a new life. I need to see her, he said finally. And I need to see what you built, Rebecca replied, but let's take it slow. We have a lot to talk about, a lot to process. The trip to Boston was a whirlwind of emotions. William was accompanied by Olivia, who insisted on being present despite the complex situation. You don't have to do this, William told her in the car. Yes, I do, Olivia replied. Rebecca has been part of our story from the beginning. I need to meet her in person. At the hospital, the reunion was emotional and at the same time disconcerting. Rebecca was thinner, but her eyes held the same light William remembered. My God, she said upon seeing him. You look different, more wise. And you're here, he replied, still in disbelief. Alive. Olivia introduced herself timidly, but Rebecca welcomed her warmly. Thank you for taking care of him, Rebecca told Olivia, for helping him find his purpose. Thank you for teaching me through him what true love means, Olivia replied. The weeks that followed were about adaptation and discovery. Rebecca had to relearn many basic things, but her mind was clear and her determination intact. I want to see the hotel, she said one day. I want to meet the people who benefited from the program. Rebecca's visit to the hotel was an emotional event. Employees who knew her before the accident cried upon seeing her, while the new ones were moved to meet the woman who had inspired the entire transformation. Shirley was one of the most emotional. Mrs. Rebecca, she said, crying, you have no idea how Mr. William used to talk about you, how his love for you changed so many people's lives. Tyler, now an 18-year-old about to enter university, was fascinated to meet Rebecca. You're the reason I'm here, he said simply. Your love saved my family. Rebecca visited every department of the hotel, met every beneficiary of the program, heard every story of transformation. This is more beautiful than I ever dreamed, she told William that night. So you turned our pain into hope for hundreds of people. We turned, William corrected. You were the inspiration for all of this. The situation between William, Rebecca, and Olivia was complex, but gradually they found a way. Rebecca, with her wisdom and generosity, proposed a solution that surprised everyone. "I spent 5 years watching you two build something beautiful," she said during an intimate conversation among the three. "I'm not going to be the one to destroy it now." "Rebecca," William began. "Let me finish," she said. "Olivia, would you be willing to share with me the love of this man and the mission you created?" Olivia was shocked by the proposal. I don't know if that would work," she said honestly. "It would work if it were based on true love, not possession," Rebecca replied, "if it were based on the common purpose we all share." William was moved by Rebecca's generosity, but also confused about the future. "And what about you, William?" asked Rebecca. "Can you love two women without diminishing your love for either?" "I don't know," he answered honestly. "I only know that I love you both, but in different ways. Rebecca, you are my history, my foundation. Olivia, you are my rebuilding, my hope." The conversation went on for hours, and in the end they decided to try a unique partnership. Rebecca would take on the presidency of the foundation that had formed around the movement. Olivia would continue as the operational director, and William would remain as the visionary and inspiration. "Let's show the world that love knows no borders or conventions," said Rebecca, "just as we showed that hospitality knows no social classes." The decision shocked many people, but also inspired others. The story of the expanded family that led the inclusive hospitality movement became a symbol that alternative forms of love and family could work when based on respect and a common purpose. 6 months after Rebecca's return, the movement had expanded to 15 countries. The American model of inclusive hospitality was being adapted to different cultures and social realities. At an international conference held at the Rebecca Carter Hotel itself, William gave a speech that summarized the entire journey. 6 years ago, I was a wealthy man who didn't know what true wealth was, he said to delegates from around the world. Today, I am a man who understands that the greatest fortune anyone can have is the ability to turn pain into love and love into action. Rebecca, who was in the audience next to Olivia, smiled with pride. "Rebecca taught me that true love doesn't die even when we think we've lost everything," William continued. "Olivia taught me that it's possible to rebuild life on stronger foundations, and all of you I met on the streets taught me that human dignity can't be bought or sold, only recognized." The applause was long and emotional. Representatives from humanitarian organizations, business people, politicians, and beneficiaries of the program were all united in a shared recognition of the beauty of what had been built. After the conference, Richard Spencer, the businessman who had sought out William after his own son experienced humiliation, came forward to give a personal testimony. "William, I have some news to share with you," he said with shining eyes. "What happened?" "My son not only reintegrated socially through the program," said Richard emotionally, "he now coordinates the social inclusion department of our hotel chain. And yesterday, he told me it was the first time in his life he felt proud of his father's work." Stories like this multiplied. The movement had transcended hospitality and was changing how society treated people in vulnerable situations. Karen, now the National Director of Human Dignity Training, received invitations from companies in all sectors to implement social awareness programs. "It's amazing how my story of prejudice and transformation resonates with so many people," she said during an interview. "Apparently, many leaders see themselves in the arrogant woman I was and want to become the person I am now." Brandon had opened his own restaurant specializing in inclusive cuisine, where people from different backgrounds worked together. The restaurant became a meeting point for executives, street artists, university professors, and people in vulnerable situations. "Food knows no prejudice," he would say. "When people sit at the table to share a meal, social differences disappear." Shirley had become the regional manager of the hotel chain that adopted the Rebecca Carter model, overseeing the program's implementation in dozens of establishments. "Who would have thought a maid would become a regional manager?" she said emotionally during a meeting. But that's what happens when people get real opportunities. Tyler was in his 2nd year of hotel management and was already interning at international hotels, implementing the American model. "My dream is to create an inclusive hospitality university," he told William. a place where people from all backgrounds can learn not just the techniques of hospitality, but especially its humanistic philosophy. As the years passed, the movement continued to grow and evolve. New challenges arose, but so did new opportunities for impact. One of the most touching initiatives was the creation of Dignity Ambassadors, people who had been helped by the program and now visited schools, companies, and organizations to share their stories and promote a culture of respect. Hope, the Syrian girl who had been saved by William at 15, became one of the most eloquent ambassadors. "When we arrived in the United States, I thought everyone hated us for being foreigners," she would tell audiences of students. "But one person showed us that there is kindness in the world, and that kindness is contagious." Walter, now over 60, had become a sort of patriarch of the movement. His experience and wisdom were consulted whenever complex situations arose. "In 40 years of working in hospitality, I've never seen such profound transformations," he said during a tribute, "not just in how we treat guests, but in how we treat each other." The story of the Rebecca Carter Hotel had become a case study in universities worldwide. Students of management, social work, psychology, and other fields came to see the project and learn about its humanistic management model. One of the most memorable visits was from a group of Stanford students who spent a week at the hotel studying the program's socio-economic impacts. "You've proven that it's possible to be profitable and social at the same time," said the professor leading the group. "This is changing paradigms in American business education." The movement also faced challenges. Some tried to copy the model only superficially, without understanding its philosophical essence. This led to the creation of a certification seal that guaranteed establishments truly followed the movement's principles. "It's not enough to offer cheap rooms," Olivia explained to interested business owners. "You need to transform the organizational culture, train staff, create support programs. It's a long-term commitment to social change." There was also resistance from conservative sectors of society, who saw the movement as a threat to traditional values. "They are destroying the social order," a conservative businessman complained in an interview. "Mixing social classes like this is dangerous." But for every voice of opposition, 10 voices of support emerged. The movement had touched something deep in American society, the need for more humanity in social relations. One special morning, 10 years after the transformation began, William woke up early and went for a walk through the hotel. It was 5 in the morning, and the establishment was quiet. He passed through the lobby where he had been humiliated a decade earlier. The sign, "Every person deserves dignity," glowed softly in the early morning light. He went up to the floor where the social rooms were located. Some families in transition were still asleep, preparing for another day of rebuilding their lives. He went down to the kitchen, where Brandon was already preparing breakfast. The young man had become the chief executive and was coordinating a diverse team that included refugees, former homeless individuals, and trained professionals. "Good morning, William," said Brandon, smiling. "You woke up early today." "I couldn't sleep," replied William. "I keep thinking about everything that happened." "And what specifically are you thinking about?" "I'm thinking about how a public humiliation turned into the most beautiful thing I've ever experienced," said William. "How the worst morning of my life became the start of the best decade." Brandon stopped what he was doing and looked at William. "You know what impresses me the most about all this," he said. "What?" "It's that you could have taken revenge," said Brandon. "You could have used your power to humiliate those who humiliated you, to destroy those who tried to destroy you. But you chose to turn pain into love." William smiled, remembering the anger he felt on the first day, the desire to get back at Karen. "Revenge would have lasted a few minutes," he said. "Love has lasted a decade and will last forever." Olivia arrived in the kitchen a few minutes later, followed by Rebecca. The two women had developed a deep friendship, based on mutual respect and the shared love for William and the movement. "You two woke up early too," observed William. "It's a special day," said Rebecca. "Today marks exactly 10 years since your first visit to the hotel as a beggar. And we have a surprise for you," added Olivia with a mysterious smile. They led him to the lobby, where a small crowd had gathered: staff, program beneficiaries, partners, and even some guests who had witnessed the original humiliation. Betty, the lady who had offered the coat to William on the first day, was at the front of the group. "William," she said with an emotional voice, "we wanted to mark this special date with something permanent." A curtain was removed, revealing a bronze statue in the center of the lobby. It wasn't a statue of William, but of a man and a woman embracing, representing all the people who had helped each other through the movement. At the base of the statue, a simple plaque, "In memory of Rebecca Carter, and in honor of all who turned exclusion into inclusion, prejudice into love, and humiliation into dignity." William was visibly moved, but it was Rebecca who was most touched by the tribute. "This is more beautiful than any individual statue could be," she said, crying. "It represents the essence of everything we've built, that no one saves themselves alone." The ceremony was simple, but deeply meaningful. People who had been touched by the movement briefly shared their stories. Karen spoke about her personal transformation, Brandon about reuniting with his mother, Shirley about the opportunities she never imagined having, Tyler about the dreams that became possible. 10 years ago, a man was humiliated in this lobby, said Olivia during her speech. Today, this same lobby is a worldwide symbol that human dignity cannot be destroyed, only temporarily obscured. William was the last to speak. 10 years ago, I thought I knew what success was, he said. I thought success was having the most luxurious hotel, the wealthiest guests, the highest profit margin. He looked around, seeing faces that represented the transformation of a decade. Today, I know that success is seeing Tyler graduate from university. It's seeing Karen and Brandon working together after years apart. It's seeing entire families rebuilding their lives. It's knowing that our example inspired changes in dozens of countries. His voice became choked with emotion. Success is turning a moment of humiliation into a lifetime of purpose. The applause that followed echoed not only through the lobby, but symbolically through all the places the movement had reached. After the ceremony, while people chatted and celebrated, William stepped aside for a moment to reflect. Rebecca and Olivia approached him. "What are you thinking about?" asked Rebecca. "I'm thinking about the future," replied William. "About what comes after 10 years of transformation." "And what do you see?" asked Olivia. "I see that this movement has a life of its own now," he said. "It no longer depends on us. People have understood the message and are multiplying it on their own. Indeed, the movement had become self-sustaining. New leaders had emerged, new initiatives were being created, and the philosophy of human dignity was spreading far beyond hospitality. "Maybe it's time for us to step back," suggested Rebecca. "Let others carry it forward while we enjoy what we've built." "No," said William with determination. "There's still much to do. There are still many people being humiliated at hotel, restaurant and store entrances. There's still a lot of prejudice to fight." Olivia smiled, recognizing in the man the passion that had attracted her years ago. "Then let's continue," she said, "but now as mentors, not as sole leaders." In the months following the 10-year celebration, the movement entered a new phase. Young leaders took prominent positions, bringing new ideas and renewed energy. Tyler, now a hospitality management graduate, created an app that connected people in vulnerable situations with job opportunities and training. "Technology can be a powerful tool for social inclusion," he explained to interested investors in the app, "but only if used with a human purpose." One of the most touching stories of this new phase was that of Yasmin, a young Syrian refugee who arrived in the United States without speaking English and with 2 small children. She was welcomed by the hotel's program and, within 2 years, not only learned the language but became a coordinator of welcoming for other refugees. "The United States gave me a second chance at life," she said during an interview. "Now it's my turn to give that chance to other people." Yasmin's story caught international attention, and she was invited to speak at the UN about refugees and social inclusion. "The Rebecca Carter Hotel didn't just give me shelter," she said in her UN speech. "It gave me dignity, purpose, and hope, and now I spread that hope to other refugees around the world." The international impact of the movement continued to grow. A UNESCO study identified the American model as one of the main social innovations of the 21st century. What began as a reaction to an episode of prejudice became a global movement for social transformation, said the UNESCO report. It's an example of how individual actions can generate systemic changes. American and European universities began offering specific exchange programs to study the American model. Young people from all over the world came to spend entire semesters learning about inclusive hospitality. On a particularly special visit, the son of a Canadian businessman who had implemented the model in London came to the United States to meet William personally. "Mr. Carter," said the young man in heavily accented English, "my father always tells the story of how you changed his view on business. Now our hotels in London are an example of social inclusion in Canada." These stories multiplied. The movement had created an international network of people committed to human dignity. But perhaps the most special recognition came from an unexpected source. One morning, William received a visit from a group of children from a local public school. "Uncle William," said a girl about 8 years old, "our teacher told us your story. Are you famous for being nice?" The simplicity of the question deeply moved William. "I'm not famous for being nice," he replied, bending down to the girl's level. "I'm famous for having learned that being nice is the most important thing there is." "And how do we learn that?" asked another boy. "By treating all people the way you would like to be treated," said William. "It doesn't matter if the person has money or not, if they live in a big house or a small one. Every person deserves respect." The children spent the morning at the hotel, learning the history and interacting with beneficiaries of the program. It was one of the most touching experiences for everyone involved. "These children will grow up with a social awareness that my generation didn't have," commented Rebecca after the visit. "They will build a better world than ours." As the years passed, the movement continued to evolve and adapt to new challenges. The global pandemic tested the program's resilience, but also demonstrated its importance. During the most difficult moments of the health crisis, the hotel transformed into a support center for vulnerable families, offering not only shelter, but medical and psychological support. "This movement proved that it's not just about hospitality," said a doctor who worked at the hotel during the pandemic. "It's about humanity, about taking care of each other in the toughest times." The solidarity shown during the crisis attracted even more international support. Humanitarian organizations from all over the world sought partnerships with the movement. 15 years after the transformation began, the movement had become a permanent part of American culture and was present in more than 50 countries. William, now with completely white hair but eyes still shining, remained active in the movement, but mainly as an inspiring figure and advisor. "My role now is to tell the story," he would say, "to ensure that future generations understand how we got here and why it's important." Rebecca had become a recognized writer, documenting not only the history of the movement, but also reflections on love, loss, and rebuilding. "Writing about our journey helps me process the miracle we lived," she said during the launch of her third book. "Not just the miracle of me waking up from the coma, but the miracle of how love can transform the world." Olivia had founded a university of social work that trained professionals specialized in inclusion programs. The university received students from all over the world. "Our goal is to train a new generation of social workers who see their work not as charity, but as social justice," she explained to new students. On a quiet Sunday afternoon, William was sitting in the hotel garden where the memorial for Rebecca was located. At 80 years old, he reflected on the extraordinary journey he had lived. Olivia, now 75, approached and sat beside him. "Thinking about something specific?" she asked. "I'm thinking about the first time I arrived here as a beggar," replied William. "If someone had told me that day that this would result in a worldwide movement, I wouldn't have believed it." "And if you could go back in time, would you do everything the same?" asked Olivia. William remained silent for a moment, considering the question. "I would do only one thing differently," he said finally. "What?" "I would have started earlier," replied William, smiling. "I wasted many years building material wealth before discovering true wealth." Rebecca approached them, holding an envelope in her hands. "What is that?" asked William. "A letter that arrived today," said Rebecca. "It's from the first family you helped 20 years ago, the Syrian family." William opened the letter curiously. It was from Hope, now a 28-year-old young woman. Dear William, Rebecca, and Olivia, the letter began, today marks 10 years as a doctor. I work at a public hospital caring for refugees and vulnerable people. Every life I save is my way of repaying what you did for my family. My children are growing up hearing the story of how 3 special people proved that kindness can change the world. Thank you for teaching me that our origin doesn't determine our destiny, but our choices do. The 3 were moved by the letter. It was one of hundreds they regularly received from people whose lives had been touched by the movement. You know what moves me most about these letters, said Rebecca. What? That they show our movement didn't end with us, she replied. Every person we helped became a multiplier of kindness. It's an endless cycle of transformation. That evening, as the hotel operated normally with guests from all social classes coexisting harmoniously, William took a final walk through the corridors. He passed through the lobby where the statue glowed softly, symbolizing unity and dignity. He went up through the floors where families in transition slept peacefully, knowing they would have support to rebuild their lives. He went down to the kitchen where Brandon, now senior executive chef, was finishing preparations for the next day. Still doing your nightly rounds? Asked Brandon, smiling. It's an old habit, replied William. I like feeling the energy of this place when it's quiet. And what energy do you feel today? I feel peace, answered William. The peace of someone who has fulfilled their mission, but also anticipation to see where this mission will lead the next generations. Brandon stopped what he was doing and looked directly at William. You know you saved my life, don't you? He said. How so? When you brought my mother back to me, you saved 2 lives, explained Brandon. Hers and mine. I was losing hope in humanity. You showed me that people can change, that love can overcome prejudice. William was touched by the young man's words. You and your mother saved each other, he said. I just created the conditions for that to happen. That's exactly what makes you special, replied Brandon. You never wanted to be the hero of the story. You only wanted to create conditions for other people to be heroes of their own stories. This conversation echoed in William's mind for the rest of the night. Indeed, the movement had always been about empowerment, not salvation, about giving people tools to transform their own lives. The next morning, during breakfast, William announced to Rebecca and Olivia a decision he had made. I want to write a book, he said. About the movement? Asked Olivia. No, replied William. About humiliation. The 2 women looked intrigued. How so? I want to write about how humiliation can be transformative when we respond to it with love instead of anger, explained William. I want to show that moments of humiliation can be portals to personal and social transformation. The book William wrote became an international bestseller. Transformative Humiliation: How Pain Can Generate Purpose touched millions of people around the world. We all experience moments of humiliation, William wrote in the introduction. The difference between those who destroy themselves and those who transform themselves lies in the choice we make, to respond with anger or to respond with love. The book generated even more interest in the movement, but also inspired other similar initiatives in different areas of society. Companies began rethinking their customer service policies. Schools implemented anti-bullying programs based on the movement's principles. Even government institutions sought guidance to improve public service. In an interview about the book, William was asked what he considered his greatest legacy. My greatest legacy isn't the movement we created, he replied. It's the shift in mindset we sparked. When people understand that treating others with dignity doesn't diminish anyone but elevates everyone, that's when we have real transformation. The journalist insisted, but how would you like to be remembered? I'd like to be remembered as someone who proved that no matter how low you fall, it's always possible to get up and help others rise too, William answered. The interview went viral, seen by millions of people and inspiring countless social transformation initiatives. At 85, William still made occasional public appearances, but his main focus was mentoring young leaders who were carrying the movement forward. One of his most promising mentees was Emma, a 25-year-old who had created a national network of dignity hotels, establishments of different categories that followed the movement's principles. William taught me that leadership isn't about being the center of attention, Emma said during a conference. It's about creating conditions for other people to shine. The movement had become much bigger than William, Rebecca, or Olivia could have imagined. It was now an autonomous social force, constantly evolving and adapting to new challenges. At a special celebration for the movement's 25th anniversary, representatives from all countries where it had been implemented gathered at the Rebecca Carter Hotel. 25 years ago, a man was humiliated in this lobby, said the current president of the Rebecca Carter Foundation during his opening speech. Today, this same lobby welcomes people from 50 countries united by the ideal that every person deserves dignity. William, now a 90-year-old man, but still mentally sharp, was invited for the closing speech. "When I started this journey, I thought I was running away from life," he said in a still, firm voice. "I discovered I was running toward my life's purpose." He looked at the diverse audience, seeing faces of people from different nationalities, ages, and social backgrounds. "You are proof that a small seed of kindness can become a forest of transformation," William continued. "Each of you carries that seed to your countries, your communities, your families." His voice grew emotional. "Rebecca always said that true love doesn't die. It just transforms," he said, looking at Rebecca in the front row. "Our love transformed into this movement, and this movement transformed into love multiplied by millions of people." The applause that followed lasted over 10 minutes. People cried, hugged, and celebrated not just the movement, but the proof that it's possible to create a more humane world. After the celebration, William, Rebecca, and Olivia sat in the hotel garden, watching people from all over the world talking, making plans, creating new partnerships. "Look what we did," Rebecca said softly. "Look what we started," Olivia corrected, "because this will continue long after us." "That's what gives me the most peace," said William, "knowing we created something that has a life of its own, that will keep growing and touching lives for generations." They sat in silence for a moment, contemplating the magnitude of what had emerged from a moment of humiliation and pain. "If we could see the future," Rebecca said philosophically, "what do you think we'd see?" "We'd see a world where social humiliation has become unacceptable," Olivia replied, "where treating people with dignity is the norm, not the exception. We'd see children growing up in a society where their background doesn't determine how they're treated," William added, "where respect is universal. And we would see that our small hotel in New York City became a worldwide symbol that an ordinary person can change the world," concluded Rebecca. That night, for the last time in many years, William took his nightly walk alone through the hotel. At 90 years old, each step was slower, but his determination remained unshaken. He stopped in the main lobby, where the statue symbolized everything they had fought for. He touched the plaque with the inscription about human dignity. "Rebecca," he whispered, as he did every night, "we did it. We turned our pain into purpose, our humiliation into dignity for millions." A gentle breeze passed through the lobby, moving the curtains. William smiled, feeling the spiritual presence of all those who had been touched by the movement. He slowly went up to the apartment where he lived with Rebecca and Olivia. The two were already asleep, but he stopped to watch them for a moment. Rebecca, at 87, still had the same sweet smile that had won him over decades ago. Olivia, at 82, radiated the same strength and determination that had inspired him in the toughest times. "Thank you," he whispered, "for teaching me that true love multiplies instead of diminishes." William lay down and, for the first time in years, slept completely at peace. There was nothing left to prove, no mission to fulfill. The movement had grown beyond its creators and would continue its transformative journey. The next morning, staff found William sleeping peacefully. He had passed away in his sleep, with a serene smile on his face. The news of William's passing spread around the world in a matter of hours. Flags were flown at half-mast in hotels across 50 countries. Ordinary people and world leaders paid their respects. The funeral became a celebration of his life and transformative legacy. People traveled from every continent to pay their final respects. "William didn't die," said Brandon during his eulogy at the funeral. He just transformed into eternal inspiration for all of us. Rebecca, even devastated by the loss, found the strength to speak. William always said that true life isn't measured in years but in lives touched, she said with a firm voice. By the millions of lives he touched, William lived 1,000 lives. Olivia, in her speech, summed up everyone's feelings. William proved that a single moment of choice can change the world, she said. He chose to respond to humiliation with love, and that love multiplied infinitely. After the funeral, the movement continued stronger than ever. The Rebecca Carter Hotel became a pilgrimage site for people from around the world seeking inspiration to create positive change in their communities. An international foundation was created to preserve and expand William's legacy. Scholarships were offered for young people from vulnerable communities to study hospitality and social management. The app created by Tyler became a global platform, connecting people in vulnerable situations with opportunities in dozens of countries. Brandon expanded his inclusive restaurant network to 15 countries, always maintaining the philosophy that food unites people, it doesn't separate them. Shirley, now the International Human Resources Director of the movement, traveled the world training managers in humanistic leadership. Yasmin, the former Syrian refugee, became a UN ambassador for refugee issues, always citing the Rebecca Carter Hotel as an example of how social inclusion can work. Hope, the Syrian girl William had helped save, became a renowned doctor and created social clinics in underserved communities across 12 countries. Karen, at 70 years old, continued working as a volunteer and became an author of books about personal transformation and combating prejudice. Everyone carried with them the essence of William's teaching, that an ordinary person can create extraordinary change when they choose to respond to evil with good. Rebecca lived to 95, dedicating her final years to documenting every story of transformation generated by the movement. Her books became classics in social transformation literature. Olivia continued directing the University of Social Work until she was 88, training thousands of professionals committed to human dignity. The Rebecca Carter Hotel continued operating as a living symbol that luxury and social inclusion can coexist harmoniously. Generations of families were benefited by its programs. 50 years after the humiliation that started it all, the world had become a significantly more humane place. The movement begun by one wounded man had transformed into a new global culture of respect and dignity. At an international human rights conference held in 2075, the model created by William was cited as one of the main social achievements of the 21st century. What began as an individual reaction to an episode of prejudice became a civilizational transformation, said the conference president, proof that each of us has the power to change the world. In the lobby of the Rebecca Carter Hotel, the statue continued to shine, reminding all visitors that every person deserves dignity. Beside it, a new plaque had been added, in memory of William Carter, 1945-2050, who proved that humiliation can be the first step toward transformation, that pain can generate purpose, and that true love has the power to change the world. The story of the man who was humiliated at the door of his own hotel had become a worldwide legend, inspiring countless people to choose kindness over anger, inclusion over exclusion, and love over hatred. And in every gesture of dignity offered to a vulnerable person, in every moment when someone chooses to treat another human being with respect, regardless of their appearance or social condition, William Carter's legacy continued to live on. Because he had proven a fundamental truth, that transforming humiliation into dignity is not only possible, it is the path to a better world. End of story. Now tell us what you thought of this story and where you're following us from. Do you believe it's possible to transform moments of humiliation into opportunities for growth? Leave your opinion in the comments with sincere words. Which part of the story touched your heart the most? We would love to read your reflections. Thank you so much for joining us throughout this exciting journey.